You wanna grow and go and get there. Sometimes upward, sometimes nowhere. You've got the ideas, you're looking up at the clouds, but how do you start standing out of the crowd? So build it with us from the ground up.
Hey everybody, welcome to From the Ground Up. I'm Zach Conway. I'm here with Kelsey McKenna. Kelsey, I'm very excited about our show today. We have another special guest, and it's exciting because one of those buzzwords I think we touch on basically every episode is the buzzword of growth. And so we're always trying to figure out, what does growth mean to businesses and how do they actually get there? One of the areas that I think we spend maybe not enough time on is the focus of what is the customer you serve in order to grow. And if you really kind of hone a persona, if you really know who your customer is, that should arguably inform everything you're doing in the business and can hopefully inform that growth. And having an actual niche persona really, really clearly honed is part of how you get there. So the person we have today, I would argue, can kind of give a masterclass in what it is to create a niche. He actually doubled his business last year, and he just told us before we started recording, he's been doubling his business since he started the business. So we definitely want to dive into how he's done that. At Seeds, we are always excited to be supporting advisors like that. So I'll also call out the fact that we're proud to have him as a user of our platform. But I'll share some quick background. So our guest got a business degree and started his career in France in 2003. But then he left in 2010. He came over to the States to start a career in San Francisco. And he was working for a bunch of different technology companies, and that included Amazon and Fitbit. And then, very strangely, he became a financial advisor. So we're excited today to have our friend Guillaume Decalf, G, as we call him. Welcome. How are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you. So we'll jump right into it. I think what we want you to kind of start to do for us is fill in the gap. So you had that career. You started in France. You came to the US. You started to work in tech. And I'd love to have the audience hear your story on then what actually led to you choosing to become an advisor. And I think maybe that'll kind of segue us into this niche story we're focused on.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So I started my career in France, and actually my life in France for 32 years. And I used to be in France. I used to be a consultant in what we call business process management. So optimization of companies, reorganization of companies, that was my specialty, my expertise. And I was in a small company. I was the first employee in this small consulting company, specialized in that type of things. And so I worked 8 years there, and then I moved to the US 14 years ago. My wife is American, so we had this 5-minute conversation about where we're going to live when we decided to get married. I say, I want to leave France and live in California. And so I said bye to my friends and family, and I moved to the US. I quit my job, and I moved to the US. And so here in the US, I'm based in San Francisco, and like everyone else here, I worked in tech for almost 10 years. So I worked at Fitbit and Amazon. I was a business analyst there, and then a project manager when I was at Fitbit, when it was still a small company. So when I started at Fitbit, we were 300 employees. And when I left, there were around 2,000. So hyper growth in 4 years. And I decided to switch career. So some people will think it's sort of a midlife crisis. You know, I'm 46. The first part of my life, I did it in consulting, and the second part, I'm doing it in the financial advising world. So around 40, 42, I decided to switch career. It took a year and a half, 2 years. And so why? So when I so back in France, everything is managed by the government in France. So we have some knowledge about the financial market, but it's not something that we like. It's kind of mysterious. You know, building an estate in France, it's buying real estate. It's really what we do in France. It's what we like. While in the US, real estate is still important, but 401k, IRAs, etc. It's all linked to the stock market. Okay, so when I came here, I was a bit lost, in all the possibilities. What's a 401k? What's an IRA? What's all this stuff? And so I had to learn by myself how it works here, and I actually liked it. I like doing that. And back in France, I liked investing in the stock market, but not that much because I didn't have time anyway. But here, like, everything was about the stock market and investing and all this. And you have RSUs, when tech I had stock options, RSUs, all these things that are completely new for me. And so I started to learn about it, at 32. When you grow up in the US, you hear about that from your parents and everything. When you grow up in another country, this is totally foreign. So I had to learn from scratch everything, and I really enjoyed it. And so when I started to feel like the tech industry, working in tech is pretty hard, particularly in startups. You do a lot of different things. And so it's exciting, but it's tiring. And so after 15 years working in like small companies and everything, and 8 years working in tech, I kind of got burned out. And I was like, okay, what do you want to do in the next 20 years? Okay, what kind of job? And so two things happened. And that's why I switched career. Two things happened. First, I discovered a blog online, don't remember the name, that says, hey, you want to change career? It's like you want to change something in your life. It's like you're in front of a forest and you have different paths, and you have to cross this forest. And you're kind of stuck because you don't know which path you're going to take. And so you're like kind of frozen. And so I was there. I was like, okay, what am I going to do? The only thing I know how to do is project management, business analysis. What else is there? And so, and this article was saying, well, you can always take a path and then go back and take another path and try and everything. It's okay, And so that gives me kind of the license to like really think about, okay, what do I want to do? And there's a second thing that happened. It's actually a book called Designing Your Life. It sounds a little cheesy, but I actually sent this book to some of my clients who want to switch career. This book really helped me. Basically, half of the book is about stories about people who did that. So half of the book is not very useful. The other half, it's what matter. It gives you some kind of homework to do to discover what you like to do. And so I did this homework. It took 2 or 3 weeks. I discovered different things. One was project management. So that's already what I was doing. Another one was helping others. That's something I wanted to do. Another one was personal finance. And when you group all these things, what kind of job can you do? Well, financial advisor. You have projects with clients, within some project management. You're helping people, and it's about personal finance. That regroup the three things I really like to do. And I was like, yeah, but is it like hard to become a financial advisor? Actually, it's not. It's almost like being a realtor. You have to pass the Series 65. And again, remember that I didn't grow up in this country. So multi-choices questions, etc. It's not the way we do things in France. So I discovered this thing. I had to learn again from scratch. Like all this technique to like being able to answer and everything. So it took a lot longer for me than it would have been for probably someone who was born in the US. But then I passed my Series 65, and then it didn't take too long. And then after that, I started the CFP that I didn't get, and I'll explain maybe later why. But basically, I did almost everything in the CFP, all the exam, and then there was COVID, and then I ran out of time. I had too many clients. to pass my CFP finally, and I've never passed it. So I'm one of these rare financial advisors who doesn't have his CFP. So it doesn't matter to my clients. But we may talk about that later. So that's where I started my firm. Officially in 2018. So I quit Fitbit in 2018 and I started my firm in 2018. But because I was so tired of being in corporate America that I took 6 months off. So I really started to work on my business in 2019, right before COVID.
So it is I touched on your sort of growth stats and the fact that you've been able to gap up so quickly. Again, I think speaks to how you've tapped into this very specific niche. What's interesting though, and this is a whole other podcast episode, but I hadn't heard your story about that sort of, two paths in the woods and trying to figure out defining your life and what everything was going to look like moving forward. And ultimately it comes down to some sense of obviously enjoyment, the things you like to do day to day. But purpose, right? Like you had a feeling that what you experienced and then, got experience in learning how to solve as it relates to becoming, coming to the States and figuring out this sort of financial complexity. You wanted to provide solutions to other people who were going through the same thing. I'm curious, once you then said, okay, I am doing this. This is my path through the woods. I'm going to start my firm. How much was it just so obvious and again, more tied to purpose that you wanted to serve this specific market because you lived it versus how much was a business decision, thinking ahead of, okay, a niche is important. It's going to lead to scale. It's going to lead to growth. And that was it. Or maybe you came to that sort of later on, like, oh, I'm glad I did it this way because this is really the best path toward growth.
Yeah, so that's a good question, and it was definitely later on because now it seems obvious. Like I'm French, yeah, I'm gonna help French people in the U.S. But at the beginning, it was not obvious at all. At the beginning, I was going to actually help people in tech because I had the network. I'd already I knew people. My very first client was someone at Fitbit. When I say I quit to become a financial advisor, basically I said that, one or two people would say, oh, I'm going to need you. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do tech. I'm in San Francisco, it makes sense. And two things happened. One, my wife, I have to credit my wife and someone else, I will talk about this person right after. But my wife said, why don't you help French people? It makes sense. And I was like, well, French people, at least French people in France, they have some kind of an attitude, they're kind of difficult, and I know what I'm talking about. And so I was like, do I really want to work with this type of people? And, I was like, I'm not sure. And so I'm not sure this is what I want. Plus, how many French people are in the US? And having a financial advisor in France, it's kind of like that in the US a little bit, but in France, it's very rare to have a financial advisor. It's because you're rich, basically. It's the only reason why you would have a financial advisor in France. And in France, it's really hard to be rich because we all around an average. It's a socialist country, so a lot of taxes and everything. So we all around an average. And so having a financial advisor in France, it's fairly rare. So it's not in our culture. And I was like, why would I go through having to deal with French people? I deal with French people all my life. Why would I do that? And so there was that. That was the first thing. And so my wife helped me change my mind and say, hey, you can try and see how it goes, And the second thing is I found someone, as I was looking to become a financial advisor, I found someone called James Poller. James Poller is a guy who does marketing for a financial advisor. This is niche. It's financial advisor. And he has a lot of free content. lot of it. And actually, his marketing is pretty good because I bought a couple of things that he had. And first year as a financial advisor is something I bought. It's a recording, and in there it was really talking about having a niche. That it's really important to be specialized, and so my wife plus him, I was like, okay, I'm gonna try to do that. We'll see. I can always like either if it doesn't work, I can always try to expand, or I can go back to tech industry, and it doesn't hurt. I'm switching job anyway. I'm switching career. Why not? And one of the things I heard from James Fowler is something around once you decide of a niche, you have to double down. You have to go for it. You have to do everything with this niche in mind. And that was the key. That was the key for me to really like, okay, I'm going to work with French people. What does that mean? That means website in French. That means most of my communication in French. So I have a website in English and in French. But that means making sure that on my website, if you're French, it's for you. If you're like, you go to my website, ouifinancial.com, wefinancial.com. That's also the name of my company, we, like yes, financial. That could have been merci financial or bonjour financial. It's We Financial. And so even the name of my company, when I chose the name, I was like, okay, I'm gonna use this French word like that. It's going to be kind of obvious that there's something French. And in my website, if you go on my website, everything is in French American between France and the US. So if you're American, you go to my website, you will say, he's not the advisor for me. Mm-hmm. Okay. And actually on the side, what I see is there are other financial advisors that says, hey, we specialize in cross-border financial planning with this country and that country, but when you go to their website, you don't see it. It's just global. So to me, it shows that they're not really specialized.
Let's get into that, I think, and maybe speak to some of this marketing stuff and how, again, having this very clear niche informs all of this, all these very specific tactics as it relates to the website. Kelsey, something you always point out is you want to repel as much as you attract point, that point on someone who is broadly looking for financial services lands on your site, they're going to know maybe you're not the solution for them, which is a good thing because it needs to do that as much as it's, really hitting the target for somebody who is in your wheelhouse. But Kelsey, maybe go on that. And I think let's kind of dive deeper on marketing.
Well, yeah, I want to get your take, but I want to add a little bit of context, which is that I do talk to a lot of advisors. So, firstly, the advisors who I've met who are growing the most are focused on a specific niche. And you're very unique in that it's very, very narrow and very, very clear on on your website, your marketing materials, everything that you're doing is really catered to that very specific persona that you're trying to attract, which is great. And then I also talk to advisors who are early on and even firms who are bigger who are afraid to do this because of the repel point. So they're really afraid that they're going to repel potential clients. So I often find myself trying to have that conversation of gently trying to ease them into seeing how not only is it about marketing and positioning in your website and the one-to-many approaches that you might take and making that very, very narrow, but it's also scale after they become a client as well. So it's both. It's not just one or the other, which I think sometimes it's seen as I can niche down in my services once I get the client, or I'll have multiple different versions of my service offering. So if you could just speak to kind of the decision making and why you don't fear repelling those clients.
I'm glad we're talking about that because I was going to say it's really scary. Mm-hmm. Niching down, it's really scary because you never know. Am I being too specialized?
Right.
and like, is it going to work? So it's really it's a risk, like, for sure. But what I notice when I talk to other financial advisor who says, "Oh, I don't have a niche," when you talk with them, they say, "Oh yeah, I serve everyone," but when you look at their clients, they actually don't serve everyone. Like, "Oh no,
Yeah.
I don't like retirees," or "I don't like people in their 30s because blah blah blah," or "Oh, I only serve people in my hometown." That's a niche.
Mm-hmm.
Like, sometimes they think they don't have a niche, but they actually have a niche.
Yeah.
Me, it happens to be obvious, but for a lot of financial advisors, they have a niche. I don't know, unconsciously, they just don't like to work with certain people and like to work with other people. And so the step about the next level to that is to tailor everything you do toward this niche. So if you're an advisor, you listen to this podcast, you may start thinking like, okay, who do I like to work with? What type of clients? And that can be any type of clients, any kind of clients. But what kind of clients I don't like? Like, for me, I don't work with people over. It's not an age issue, but usually people who are older, because I'm really tech oriented. People who are older, they cannot follow, they cannot go on Zoom and everything. So that won't work.
Mm-hmm.
And as I age, right now, most of my clients are around 40. I'm 46, so most of my clients are on my age, but I have like clients 25, clients like 60, 65, but rarely above that age, because it's a question of generation. They're not used to Zoom, they don't like it, or they want to see the advisor face to face. It's not something I do. I'm all virtual. And so you have those advisors who say, "Oh, I don't have a niche," or "What is my niche?" Look at your clients. That's the first thing. So that's for advisors who already have some clients. For advisors who don't have clients, well, try a niche and try first to have a niche. And if you cannot find enough people, then you change your niche, or you increase the number of people. But I mean, I saw financial advisor, like, I'm going to give you two examples. There are a financial advisor that is specialized in Native Americans. That's the only clients he has.
Mm-hmm.
Another financial advisor is specialized in tattoo artists.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure there is less tattoo artists than French people in the US.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have tens of thousands of niche. And I would say, like, I know it appears like a niche for French people in the US. It appears like a niche for everyone, but it's actually not that much of a niche, because I work with business owner, I work with artists, I work with like doctors, I work with all sort of people.
Mm-hmm.
Because French people, they're everywhere, they do everything in this country. And so to argue that, like, if you have a niche like, "Oh, I only work with dentists,"
That's
you
more
probably
narrow.
have even less people. Yeah, it's more narrow than what I have, because I have dentists, I have doctors,
Yeah.
I have all sort of people. But there's not a lot of financial advisor. And so one of the key things when you have a niche is the competition.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have pretty much no competition. There are two other independent financial advisors, and they're older, they don't market as much, they're probably going to retire in the next 5 years. So there's no one. There's another big group, but they sell financial products, and I'm independent, so I don't sell financial products. So I can differentiate myself easily from them. So if you are French and you're in the US, like, you look in Google, you type French financial advisor, anything, you will find me, second or third link.
Mm-hmm.
First link being a guy named French. It's his last name. It's French. It has nothing to do with French. It's just his last name. So
yeah. So I just want to talk.
It's a competitive advantage.
Yeah, totally. And you're touching on something so important, because a niche doesn't have to be like, you can define it however you want to define it. And I feel like a lot of this comes down to really getting a handle on the pain points that would drive somebody to seek a financial advisor. So, like, to your point, being French and living in America, that's pretty broad. You can be all different walks of life. However, there's a very unique pain point of a set of problems that you may be experiencing, set of questions that you have that would drive you to want to work with a very niche or persona driven advisor who's focused on that problem set. So can you speak a little bit about how you kind of iterated and played around at the beginning to find the right problem set to use in some of your like one-to-many strategies? So I know you do webinars, there's so many tactical things that you're doing, everything on your website. How did you kind of, obviously you experienced it yourself, but what else were you doing to figure out the right positioning and the right types of content to offer?
I try everything and see what stick, what works, what doesn't work. I remember at the beginning, so one of the problem with my niche that you may not have with other niche is that there are not a lot of, like the CFP, internet doesn't have a lot of information about cross-border financial planning with friends. You know, everything that you do in this country in terms of financial planning is towards people who are born in the US, who live in the US, we're going to retire in the US.
Right.
Not a lot of things, there are not a lot of information. So one of the challenge was to actually learn everything I can learn about, and I made mistake, and sometimes I, like when I do webinar, sometimes I have a question I don't know to answer because I've never had this question. It's pretty rare now after 4 or 5 years, but it took me that long to really, really deep dive on the things. And so why do I say that? That's because it's linked to my marketing. Like 3 or 4 years ago, I wouldn't have been able to do webinars because I didn't have enough knowledge. I didn't have enough experience. So you need to have experience. Like if you start working with, people, like your niche can be employees at Facebook, Meta. That can be your niche. You know, I know a financial advisor. He only works with 2 companies, and they're smaller than tech companies. One is a waste management companies, and the other one I don't know what. But it's really these 2, and he's known for that. He's known like an employee. If you're an employee in this company, if you need a financial advisor, you're gonna work with this guy. So that works too. And that's that's more of a niche than what I do, you know, but he knows every single thing about this company, but it doesn't take 4 or 5 years to know every single things about a company. To me, there's so many things to know in terms of retirement, estate planning. I mean, so many things that it took me that many years, and I still learn like every single year, and things change too. So there are things that you cannot do at the beginning because you're just not ready. You know, you need to, and one of the things for new advisor, you know, the scary part is when you start with clients, you know, and you never had clients before, and that's going to be your first client, your second client, or your 10th client, and so you don't have that much experience, you know, and also that's why when I started, I didn't bill that much. I had an hourly rate, so I have an hourly rate and an AUM rate. I didn't bill that much at the beginning. No, I bill a lot more because I'm a lot more efficient. When I do a meeting, I know exactly what to do, etc. So once you get all that knowledge, then you can start doing like some kind of more targeted marketing. So at the beginning, when I started, in terms of marketing, I had my website. I was on LinkedIn. So because I was in tech, I hired a developer to do a layer on LinkedIn to be able to go through all the profile that are French in the name. I have language French, and I went to all the profile, and I just click a button, and I keep inviting people, connecting with people. Hundreds and hundreds of people. I don't know if it's still possible because I stopped doing that, but at the very beginning, and it's the law of big numbers. You know, when you start, you have to be known. Like if you, I was not known in the French community. You know, it took me years to start to be known, and people started to see me here and there, and they don't even remember when they saw me now because they see me in different places, their friends, colleagues, etc. And so, but at the beginning, no one knew me. So you have to be able, if you have a niche, and that's why it's so important to define a niche, because then you can reach out influencer in this niche. If your niche is veterinarian, veteran or anything, well, you're gonna reach out to I don't know, army events or things like that. Like French events. There's plenty in French events in the Bay Area, and at the beginning, I used to go to French events. Like nothing to do with financial planning. It was like food. It's always about food anyway, as French people. And then I have a stand, and I have people like seeing me. And so same. I work with like French American CPAs. And the thing is, once you have a niche, it's so much easier to identify who you can talk to, where you should go. And I work all over the US. So I'm registered in about 8 states, and I work in about 30 states. Okay, so the French people everywhere. So when you have, it looks like a niche, but again, if the US is your playground, and I even have clients in France, suddenly it gets a lot bigger. Mm-hmm. So if you have tattoo artists, there are hundreds of thousands of tattoo artists in the US, probably. You don't have to be only in your state. But anyway, so once you have the knowledge, then you can do some targeted marketing. And my marketing at the beginning was just making myself known. I do so the usual thing, blog, but my blog is in French. And so all the articles are in French. And so I had a lot of articles. And the first year is the hardest because you have to have enough articles, so enough ideas with like your angle, like, oh, you're French, so you have this and these problems, and that comes with experience. So every time I had a question that keeps coming, I used to do an article like that. It has two advantages. One, I share my articles on LinkedIn, on Facebook. I'm in Facebook groups, etc. I used to answer questions on Facebook all the time, financial question for free. So you have to be careful because you have regulation. So you have to be vague enough or not to be like a very precise advice, but precise enough to answer the question. So you have to be a little careful. But then, you go to a group of tattoo artists. There are probably some. A group of French people. There are so many groups of French people. So Facebook was also a huge way to do things at the beginning. And every time I have a blog article, I share it on Facebook. I share it on LinkedIn. I'm part of a bunch of groups on Facebook. And so that's the first advantage is like you showcase your knowledge. That's the first one. Second one, because it's a question that comes back all the time, instead of having to answer in emails or on Facebook, oh, how do I transfer money between France and the US? Click, link, boom. Everything you need to know about transferring money between the US and France. And then I share it on Facebook. I answer the question, and it's really precise. So that's one thing. The other thing in marketing that I discovered is who cares about the knowledge? Sometimes financial advisors are afraid to share their knowledge and share what they know because that can be, then what adding value do you have to your clients? I share to give you a sense of my webinar, I have about 500 to 700 people in my webinar, usually. Whether live, usually it's about 30 to 40% of this number live, and then they look at the recording. And so that's 500 to 700 people. That may not be my clients because my webinar are 1 hour and a half, usually 2 hours, because I have a lot of questions. I don't care because at least I'm filtering. Like the people who don't have like huge needs, that my webinar will be enough. And that's people, and I can concentrate my work on people who have like complex challenge or things they're not sure and everything. Sometimes I have people contacting me and I already said everything in my webinar. And
they want to pay you
probably
anyway.
don't need me, but they want to pay me anyway, just to make sure, just to have peace of mind. So don't be afraid. One of the big advice I would give to financial advisor is don't be afraid to give free stuff, to do it for free. It doesn't matter. Like, you can go on YouTube to do financial planning. You can to learn everything you need to know on financial planning. The clients who are going to go to YouTube and not going to see your value, they don't matter. They will never be your clients anyway.
Yeah. And it's so true. There's this fear of like delivering too much value, and then why would anyone pay, when it's really flipped on its head, where if you're delivering that value, then when they need something, they want to pay you because you already proved that you can deliver value. So if that's your free content, then what must it be like to work with you like one-on-one, It's so funny. There's so many similarities. That's like the point of this whole podcast, but there's so many similarities between like how you've approached your business and your clientele and like the advice within startup communities and like tech companies as well, which is, I guess, generally just business advice. But it's funny because it's definitely less common to hear it talked about this way. So I really appreciate you sharing that. Zach, I can tell you want to ask a question.
Well, I want to just a couple of sort of like red underline things that we're hearing that I think are pretty compelling takeaways for people, as they think about doing this in their own business. The first is that leap of faith aspect. And you shared, it is, as you said, it's scary. And actually committing to something and aiming at something of who your customer is. And then Kelsey, what you say often is the calibration part on the other side. So, you started with, okay, my customer is going to be, in the tech industry. That's kind of the thing that I'm aiming at first. It didn't end up being that, but you knew to actually start with something. You knew that you should be focused on some, specific clientele, and then you calibrated. You moved away from that. You picked sort of a new angle, but then you ran with that. On the marketing side, and again, kind of bringing that to life, you're able to uniquely speak to the pain. So it's like that dot connecting of, first of all, you specifically were living it yourself, but because you have a more narrow persona you're serving, you're speaking to their specific pain points, right? What's going on with them in their financial situation that everything in your marketing, and as you improve and improve and improve upon that over time, it's always just scratching that itch, if you will, right? That's, it's kind of like I always say, like the answers to the test, why any of these people would be raising their hand seeking advice because you lived it. So the more your content speaks to that, you'll be able to, have them connect to that. And then again, just to underline what you just spoke to, that's another leap of faith, in my opinion, that delivery of value stuff, right? Mm-hmm. Giving value away feels really scary too. So you have all these sort of leaps of faith. I need to commit to a certain customer. I need to give away value for, air quotes, for free. But then what that leads to, I think, again, you're such a case study on how effective that can be. And what I think is interesting too is, I would argue giving away value, especially within a narrow niche, and then to your point, finding the customers who are still willing to pay you for that peace of mind, that's where our real value is as the advisor. Mm-hmm. And so those are good clients. Those are the people you actually, back to your sort of purpose, origin story, those are the types of people ultimately you want to work for, is they are willing to say, I don't want to do this myself. You clearly have expertise in this area. And even though you just answered like 9 of my 10 original questions in a webinar, I still want to pay you to help me run all this and kind of shepherd me through it. So I think it's really, compelling, again, that leaps of faith and the calibration over time, how quickly, again, in basically 4 years in a business, you've been able to hone this, and it'll only arguably get better and better and better, and just more and more people through the door. But Kelsey, what else? I
just wanted to say
that?
One thing that G's mentioned that I noted that you didn't specifically call out, which is like webinar level knowledge on your niche, just the clarity of decision making, G, you were talking about, of just knowing where to go. Because I do talk to a lot of advisors who they're kind of like, where do I start with marketing? And this can really help you decide where to start, because if you know, okay, I'm targeting this specific persona within this niche, then you go to the Facebook groups, the events, all of the places where they already are. Like, that's where you go and that's where you start. And that's going to increase the likelihood that that's actually going to be worth your time. If not landing a client directly from that, at least learning more about that client and what their questions are, what their needs are, so you can then build that knowledge and feedback loop for the rest of it. So, yeah.
Yeah, just to be also, marketing is just, so I don't know if I got lucky, but because I'm in a niche, then you attract people from this niche. So I attract French people, marketing French people. I work with, my website has been done with a French person in Los Angeles, marketing agency in Los Angeles. And I got contacted about, I don't know, a year and a half ago. And that's when I started my webinar by a French marketing guy who has actually a list of French people in the US, like a mailing list of French people in the US. He has a bunch of emails. So we sent about 80,000 emails last year, and we're going to send 1 million emails this year just to market my webinar. So also, it's not just me online or me myself,
Yeah.
I was lucky enough, and also because I have a niche, like I can tell this marketing person, target French people in the US, and we're going to send my webinar. And that's why I get like 500, 600, 700 people in my webinar. It's because I send hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of emails and really targeted. Like, hey, it's in French. And so they live in the US, they receive an email in French. I'm like, huh. And then some question like retirement between France and the US, or investment between France and the US, or going back to France. What are the consequences? And it's really tailored. So if you have a niche, you can do that. You can then find all the people who work. If your niche is a type of job, you can find all the people in that type of job. Nowadays, it's fairly easy to have that, and send a bunch of email with webinar in it to say, hey, it's an online webinar. It's going to be recorded. So even if you don't have time, you can watch it later. And you send that. It gives you like visibility. It showcases your knowledge. And sometimes people don't even look at my webinar. Just say, hey, I want to have a meeting with you.
You jump ahead.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I think too, so maybe the counterpoint or the reason, again, people, if you're really truly afraid of this leap of faith, right? You're scared to commit to the niche. That what you just described is arguably the best reason to commit to it, because the amount of advisors we talk to that create a ton of content, and advisors, you don't like spending time and money to go to waste. And the reality is that's what is often happening. You're creating a ton of content, but you're just kind of like shotgun blasting it into the void, right? Because you don't have that curated list. You're sending it out into the universe, but that doesn't mean anybody's going to connect the dots, because then maybe somebody goes to your website, but there's nothing there that actually speaks to them directly. So that's maybe the best argument is, hey, you're spending a ton of time and money as advisors creating marketing materials. Like generally advisors are all doing it, but it's not connecting. It's not actually landing anywhere where you're, again, speaking to the specific pain point and conveying that your offering actually reflects or can solve that very specific problem. So that's probably the best case.
The marketing material looks all the same. It's not because it's not designed to a niche. It's like when I go to, as a financial advisor, when I go to a tech event like Future Proof, when we went to, the number of time I heard the sentence, "Hey, we're gonna give you back your time with our software. We're gonna give you back your time," and I'm like, great. I heard that so many times that is just a stereotype now. And, it doesn't talk to me. Like, what can you do? Like, I can tell I never answer again, as a financial advisor on LinkedIn, they send me, hey, we can create that many leads for you, etc. The only time I answer this type of things is if they say, hey, you look like you're working with French people, we can target the French people.
Yeah.
At least they look at it. They look at my website and what I do. It's not a random automated thing. And that's also one of the things with Seeds. You said something when I received the first email from Seeds, I was like, okay, I pass it. Then I received a second email that shows that at least there was, I don't remember exactly what it was, but in the email, it shows that they look at my website, there was something customized.
Yep.
And I was like, oh, okay, I'm going to answer. Okay, that's people who actually make the effort to like look in what I do and things like that. And that's why I answered this email. I know we hear.
Yeah, full circle. I appreciate you calling that out because Kelsey and I talk a lot. I mean, it's literally the premise of this podcast where we're a tech company. We want to serve advisors like you, but we're pretty honest in saying, unless you're getting a lot of this other stuff right, Seeds is not a silver bullet. We can't give all your time back. We can't, deliver growth at scale forever unless we're also coming in, hopefully through this podcast, but also through Seeds as a business, trying to help firms get these other areas right. And to your point on that email, I'm sure something in that email spoke to that, right? We want to, you're serving a certain demographic, we can support your growth, but here's exactly why, as long as you're also on your side doing those things to help, kind of bring it all together. I think a lot of really tangible, super helpful takeaways for advisors. And again, you're such a case study in getting this right. We're really excited to see you continue to grow as a result. Before we wrap up, we always go around the horn. We try to listen to all sorts of stuff going on in the world and talk about what are we most excited about, what's kind of interesting to us right this second. Kelsey, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, before I say what's exciting or what I'm learning, I do just want to say that hopefully we can have G back for a second episode on like scale and tech, because I've worked with a lot of advisors in my time serving advisors, and G is doing some very interesting stuff to be a one-man shop serving this many clients and growing this fast and using tech in a really interesting way, and systems and process and all of that, automation, all that good stuff. So we should definitely dive into that too, because I'm sure people are curious after hearing your story.
Yeah, you don't know this yet, but you're a regular, and this is another job for you.
Yeah, put it on the list. Yeah, but something I'm learning. So I'm not going to bring up a book or anything. I'm learning right now, but I just wanted to mention something that's like we haven't mentioned, which is just like this is I don't know which episode this is going to air, like 9 or 10 probably. So I just wanted to mention that I'm learning so much about like myself and our target audience and our target persona and niche that we're right in the middle of defining as a business, and just learning about myself in terms of coming out here and not speaking one-to-one with advisors or me directly speaking to a firm, and just generally speaking about the industry and my opinions. It's been quite a fun experience, scary and also fun. So I just wanted to mention that because we haven't really looped back on that. But yeah, it's definitely something I've been thinking about over the last week. G, what about you?
Yeah. So can I say two things?
Yes.
It's two completely different things. So one, because I grow so much, I try to keep in mind, and that's something I try to really, center myself on that regularly. It's like, why do I do that? It's not for money. Mm-hmm. Actually, it's not like I don't care. It's great to have money, but it's to help as many people as I can. And that's why I do those webinars. And at some point I was like, should I make people pay for those webinars? And I was like, no, because I want to help as many people as I can. And the money, and if you keep that in mind, the money will come. Mm-hmm. In my opinion, if you're ethical enough that you want to help your clients, and sometimes I tell clients, like, don't don't pay for my stuff. I give you all the advice pro bono. You don't need me. And I want to keep that really in mind when I work. So that's the first thing I wanted to say. Second thing has nothing to do with that. It's about what I wanted to try. So right now I have a big screen. So I have my laptop and I have a big screen in front of me. And sometimes I use like 3 screens, etc. And I got sort of excited by what Apple released, like the Vision Pro, because I'm all Apple, I have an iPhone and everything, and you can just move screens. So instead of having all this stuff, I can maybe have 3 screens and it can be big and I can do a bunch of stuff, etc. And because I have a lot of clients at Apple, some of them worked on the product. And so I asked them directly, like, what did you think about it? And because they're French, they like to criticize stuff. And so I get all the things, and they say, well, it's too heavy to really like work for hours on it. And so, but they say wait because other things are coming and will be lighter and everything. But because I'm all virtual, like I'm sitting down all the time and having like something more immersive, that sounds appealing to me. So I got really excited by that product.
Wait till that's just, implanted in our brains and you don't need to wear the headset.
Yeah, but then you can hack it. I thought about that. But then if they hack my brain,
you can't rip it out. You need a screwdriver to like rip it out of your head, I guess.
That's yeah. And same, because I'm tech oriented and I was in tech, I use ChatGPT is my best employee.
Yeah.
I use it all the time for a lot of things.
Love ChatGPT.
It's amazing. It's amazing where it's going to take us. Mine is, so I was under the impression that I had brought up Taylor Swift like at least 10 times on this podcast. And then I was told, in fact, I hadn't yet. So that's where I'm going this week. It was when we're recording this, it was the Grammys this past Sunday. We're talking about marketing during this episode. We touch on marketing a lot. Taylor is a master of marketing. And if people, who are Swifties like me, who really follow this stuff, if you're not, you really should. Even from a business perspective, she won 2 Grammys, I think. At the Grammys, after the first one, she announced an album that I guess she's been working on for several years. That's going to be coming out in April. It basically exploded Twitter. Right. The entire internet was then talking about this album. The website crashed because of all the pre-order sales. So super fascinating, the ability. She's such she's obviously, I think, a great artist, but a business person in creating this like undercurrent of excitement. It reminds me of like the Harry Potter books, and when they were going to come out back then, we all had to wait for them to get released. And that excitement, but also that community building, right? Everybody's online, collectively excited about what's coming. So, I'm sure plenty you could apply. Get everybody really excited about your next webinar, like Taylor Swift dropping her new album.
Her album.
Yeah, same exact thing. But anyway, with that, G, we really appreciate it. Again, tons of really insightful takeaways for advisors.
Thank you.
Who should take that leap of faith, think about a niche, maybe not quite as, I would say perfect as yours has been defined, but whatever it is, take the leap of faith, start to calibrate. It really drives everything else in the business moving forward. So we appreciate it. If you haven't checked out Seeds, listeners, please go do so. www.seedsinvestor.com. You can follow us on X and you can follow us on LinkedIn. We appreciate it. See you next time.